forward. Ladies and gentlemen, KrisAnne Hall.
I hope that I am proof that you don't have to be a one-eyed old fat guy to love the Constitution. I am an educator by nature. That is what I do. I travel around the country and I teach what we have failed to teach for generations. If we think that changing out the guy in the White House is going to fix our problems, we don't know what our problems really are. If we think that there's a difference between the Republicans and the Democrats when their establishments are in line, we don't know what the problems really are. And I believe that one of the greatest obstacles that we as Americans face today is the fundamental level of ignorance that we share across this country about the establishment, the purpose, the meaning, and the directives of the Constitution of the United States. We are filled with oath takers. My goodness, you can't even be a dog collector today without taking the oath to support the Constitution of the United States, which it ought to be. Problem is, I got a funny way of thinking. I'm just thinking, if you're going to be an oath taker, you ought to be an oath keeper. But how do you keep an oath when you have absolutely no idea what it means? I mean, our courtrooms are infested with people who have no understanding of the Constitution whatsoever because we don't teach the Constitution in law school. We teach constitutional law, which teaches that men and women in black robes know more about the Constitution than the men who wrote it, because after all, they're a bunch of dead guys who wrote some outdated, irrelevant documents, and we need the judges and the lawyers to go into our courtrooms and pool their own ignorance and redefine and transform who we really are. They want to call our Constitution the supreme law of the land, which, if we were actually going to be speaking correctly, is the supreme contract of the land. They want to take that supreme contract of the land, that agreement between the states, and call it a living, breathing document. But I want you to find one of them who would volunteer to have their employment contracts interpreted that way. It won't happen. Because you see, when we allow them to alter what the contract means, we transform fundamentally the very foundations of who we are. Hosea chapter 4 verse 6 says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge, and we are being destroyed for our lack of knowledge." Are you sick and tired of an out-of-control federal government? Because you see, that wasn't loud enough, because I don't think you're actually sick and tired of it yet. Amen. Do you think this federal government is completely out of control? Yeah. Well, that's more like it. Are you sick and tired of the executive branch writing law, overturning law, setting aside law, and even promising to do more? Let me let you in on a little secret. You don't have a president problem. That's a Congress problem. The fact that the executive branch is stealing congressional power by writing law and overturning it, setting aside it based on who their biggest donors are and their favorite lobbyists may be, is not a presidential problem. That is a congressional problem, because our founders leaders knew that too much power vested in the executive branch would lead to a tyrannical king, so they vested the most amount of power in the federal government within the Congress, the House of Representatives, the direct representatives of the people, the Senate, the direct representatives of the states. And they were in charge of keeping this man under control when they knew by nature, human nature, he would want to be king. Our Congress has become a failure to their oath. They have become complicit in the destruction of our Constitution by their failure to act and their failure to maintain their duty under Article 2, Section 4, impeaching those who destroy the Constitution, and Article 1, Section 7, the power of the purse vested in the hands of the House of Representatives alone, with the power to defund every single rogue action this tyrant in chief keeps establishing. Every person in the House of Representatives who has voted in favor of any of these budgets for the last 12 years is a traitor to the Constitution of the United States, is selling your children into slavery and debt. They are violations of their oath. They are not oath keepers. They are oath breakers, and they have no problem lying to your face, and it makes no difference what magic letter is behind their name. Every single one of these budgets gives you a plan. We will cut the deficit over the next 10 years. We will limit our spending over the next 10 years. You will gladly pay us. We will gladly pay you Tuesday for all our spending today. And we have ended up with a wimpy government selling our children into debt and slavery while they stuff their pockets with richness, they stuff their brains with egos, and they lead us into slavery and tyranny. There is not a single budget ever written that Congress is required to follow for 10 years. Do you know why we only need the House of Representatives to pass a budget? Go read Article 1, Section 7. The power of the purse was placed in the hands of the House alone for a reason. It says the Senate may offer amendments, but they don't have to. This whole dog and pony show thing we see every year while the Senate does this and the House wrings their hands. Oh, what are we going to do? Oh, what are we going to do when the Senate won't go along with us? I guess we'll just have to give in and fund all of these unconstitutional agencies, or the government will shut down. You know what I say? Shut her down. But the Senate is involved in that process necessarily, and the president has no say. You know why? Because it's not a law. Your budget is not a law. Your budget expires every year. Laws don't expire. And every time your budget expires, we get a new crisis to distract us from the real tyranny that's before us. We get to stand for those champions who want to save America by selling us into slavery and lying to our faces. No Congress in the future is ever bound by a budget that's been passed by the current Congress. And when they look you in the eye and tell you we will cut this budget, we will cut our spending, we will reduce this deficit over the next 10 years, they are oath breakers and they are liars, and that makes them wicked. Congress, with their little dog and pony shows they call congressional hearings, where we get to load up people on pedestals and say, wow, he's real good at talking real mean to those nasty liberals. When was the last time you actually saw them do something. I call it the shuffle and jive, right? Look at me. I'm doing something. I'm calling people out. I'm calling Hillary Clinton a criminal. I'm calling Eric Holder a criminal. Look at me. I'm doing something. In the meantime, they're not doing anything at all, but being false prophets, creating a situation where the people of America fall in love by cult of personality worship, people who are leading us into servitude. I have come to understand that America is suffering from Stockholm syndrome. We have fallen in love with our captors. You know where I get my biggest criticism from? It's amazing because I'm on Facebook and I'm on Twitter. I have a radio show that I broadcast 6 days a week, podcasted on my website 5 days a week. I don't get attacked by liberal trolls. Do you know who attacks me? The Republicans. I get more attack from the Republicans than I do from the Democrats because, hey, I'm not saying anything that ain't true about the Democrats. As a matter of fact, when I talk about them, they're proud of the things that they've done. But when I call out these Republicans who, by the way, in their party platform called themselves the party of the Constitution, are actively destroying the Constitution, and I'm showing you that, I am told, KrisAnne, you can't eat your own. Let me make something very, very clear. They are not my own. I have no kinship with anyone who can smile at me and destroy my liberty with the same mouth and the same body. And America needs to wake up and see that there is no difference in politics. My favorite founding mother, her name is Mercy Otis Warren. She wrote a history book about her politics, and she called them all prostitutes for power. How about our Supreme Court of the United States? You have no hope in the Supreme Court of the United States. They're the ones that said health care is a power that's rightly wielded by the federal government. Not only that, our most conservative guy on the Supreme Court said that the EPA can regulate carbon emissions without even recognizing one time that the EPA does not even constitutionally exist. Hey, I'm just trying to show you the federal government is not going to fix itself. It is not the source of all the solutions of our problems in America. They are the source of all the problems in America. And the only way we are going to fix this, if we get the proper perspective on government, we turn our backs on this federal circus and start focusing local. I want to read something to you really quickly. I'm going to read it to you so you know I'm not lying to you, okay? This is the last paragraph to the Declaration of Independence. Now, you remember the Declaration of Independence starts, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. Declaring right then and there, we are not a kingdom, we are a republic, because we don't need permission from the king, because we have the authority of the people. And they said, whenever any government operates contrary to those means, it's the right of the people to alter or abolish them. Alter, or it's your right, it is your duty. Here, I want to read to you this last paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, because I want you to know, as I know, as we all must know, that the solution to an out-of-control federal government was designed by our founders. They knew we would become pacified in prosperity. They knew we would become lazy in luxury. And they knew at that moment the government would step up and enslave us. And they wanted to design a solution for us to fix that problem when it happens. They said, we, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions do, and in the name and by the authority of the good people, not the king, of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. We did not break free from the tyranny of Great Britain to simply create 13 little colonies that were now going to be formed into a kingdom called the United States. We created 13 independent, free, sovereign states who held the same power. When you finish reading here in the Declaration of Independence, each and every state carried the same power and authority as Great Britain, France, and Spain. That word state is not synonymous with colony. It is synonymous with independent, free, sovereign country. We are not subjects to the federal government. We are its master. We are a republic where the federal government is the colony, and the states and the people are the kings. Now, the people, all the authority comes from the people, because there's one thing I want to throw in here real quick. You must recognize that your state can become tyrannical too. That's why maintaining this oath is so important. Our solution is not in the federal government. Our solution lies in understanding that the majority of the power rests in the states and local government. Hey, you know what? If the world was perfect, according to KrisAnne Hall, we would completely ignore the federal government for 6 years. Every election dollar, every election minute would be dedicated to electing a constitutionally minded school board. You have a constitutionally minded school board, you don't care about Common Core, it's not coming. You get a constitutionally minded city council and county commission, Agenda 21 will be something everybody else is suffering and dealing with, because your constitutionally minded local government will understand how wicked and evil that is. You have, in 4 years, you can have a constitutionally minded sheriff, which I'm wondering, why ain't he here today? You get a constitutionally minded sheriff, and you will understand what liberty really feels like. Because if you have a constitutionally minded sheriff, the sheriff knows the EPA, the FBI, the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Land, the Bureau of Land Management, and every other one of these unconstitutional executive agencies has no power in your sheriff's jurisdiction. After 4 years, you will have created a crucible of government-trained people who are constitutionally minded oath keepers, and you can send them to your state governments, and then you will understand that the federal government can be under control. Because a state government that is constitutionally minded knows they have the duty, they have the obligation to keep the federal government within its prescribed, limited, and defined boundaries, and they know they have the power to say, hey, feds, we are not your colonies, we are not your subjects, we are your masters, and you cannot steal our power and use it, and if you try, it has no force here. But you want to know the dirty little secret? The dirty little secret is this. The feds don't want you to know. The feds don't have the manpower or the resources to enforce their tyrannical laws and regulations. They rely on co-opting the states and local governments to do it for them. Kansas proved that when they passed their Second Amendment Preservation Act and then wrote a letter to Eric Holder and told him, if you think you can take our guns, why don't you just come on and give it a shot? Because the last time I checked, we're not seeing federal troops running into Kansas on CNN. You know why? Because we, America, needs to know, not just here, but in our hearts, that the federal government is nothing but a bunch of hot air, a bunch of juvenile schoolyard bullies, and it's about time we take the power from the bullies and put it back in our states. I'm dreaming of a day where health care is something that is settled on the local and state level. I am dreaming of a day where schools are run by parents instead of bureaucrats. I am dreaming of a day where liberty prevails. And I am dreaming of a day where we, the Americans, say, we are independent, we are free, and we hold these truths to be self-evident. Where we have the courage to stand and say, we are the masters of the government, we are not your subjects. We will no longer tolerate your tyranny, we will no longer submit to your rule of law. We will now stand for our children so they don't have to, and we will not comply. Because then and only then will we really know what liberty is all about. Let's just not be oath takers. Today, let's all be oath keepers. Because our children are relying on us to defend liberty for them. Let's create America that God can bless again. Let's be a blessable nation. Thank you.